Nobody's opposed. Welcome, David, by the way. I think you might have been at the last one, but hello.
Hey there.
Hey, good seeing you on the internet.
Nice starship.
Thanks, yeah. Don't worry, it's rented. So it looks like we are recording. I don't think we're set up the stream still, so this is going to get posted. Does anybody else want to lead the meeting? I guess I kind of started doing it, so. Cool.
So yep. Things.
Yep. Express.js meeting, April 22nd, 2020. Hello. We do not have any members of the technical committee with us right now, so this might be kind of a short meeting, but we are going to go over our agenda real quick. We just talked about it offline, so off air, so I'll talk about it again. I think the most important thing on our agenda is a status checkup about the imminent release of 4.18 and 5.0. I'd like to spend, if we can, any time on that, if anybody in the meeting can give any context about it. Then otherwise we have discussing or trying to make a decision maybe about where to keep org-wide documents like the charter, the code of conduct, and similar where to keep lists about personnel like triage or TC members. I can give some more color on that when we get into it. And then we'll try to do some triage check-in. We'll probably talk about some stuff about onboarding help from enterprises or letting companies try to contribute or help contribute. And we have an agenda item here for how to get involved in Express 5. Where do you start? So yeah, Girish, do you have anything to say about the blockers? Have you gotten a chance to look at your list since you posted that list? I think like maybe it was 10 days ago or something.
Yeah. So if you look at the list that is, the link is pasted in the chat by John. If you think back maybe a couple of months when Doug originally posted the list of items that are earmarked for 4.18 versus 5. The most important thing was 4208, which is providing a deprecation print for the extended query parser, which is the code change, which is basically complementing the code change in the PR 3621. Which is the change of the default setting of the query parser from extended to simple. Now, this was a prerequisite for releasing Express 5 because under normal conditions, we should provide a deprecation warning prior to any major breaking changes into the release. And that's the pretext in which we made 4208 and 3621 as a prerequisite for Express 5. Now, with some internal teams of Doug's organization testing these changes, the feedback which they provided is the deprecation warning that is printed in the console under most normal circumstances is going to be an annoyance and it's going to affect the user experience in most of the common use cases, which I completely agree. Because there are two issues. One is the common use case of Express usage. The most simple, banal code of 5 lines of Express code to up and make it running a web server is going to start this, print this message, number one. Number two, there is no easy route for the user to figure out how do you suppress the warning. He needs to read the documentation extensively and understand some of the APIs to actually address the deprecation situation. So it's not worth spending time only to confuse the user. That essentially means 4208 should not land. Doug has already proposed in the PR, just waiting for anybody else to make an opposition on that. but it has been 3 days, and I suppose we are good with that. And according to my understanding, that means this is the last blocker for Express 5, and we could actually go ahead with releasing that in parallel to 4.8. And 4.8 is no more a prerequisite for 5, more importantly.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like the biggest issue on that list was 4.208, which was going to go into 4.18 to clear the way before we make big changes in 5. And that's likely going to get dropped. It's being addressed by Doug, and sounds like you as well, Ganesh. So
yeah,
cool.
that's right.
Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, there's a few other PRs in that list that look like they are still being worked on, et cetera. But I think most of them are Express 5 stuff. So cool.
Yeah, many other things are on the lines of documentation. I'm just checking which all are still pending, but predominantly looks like most of them are landed. 1134, that is using promises in the documentation around using promises in the middleware.
Mm-hmm.
It's still open. Document next of router behavior. Request host property documentation. Yeah, I think these are the 3 documentation PRs that still need to be landed. And request response modularization, which Wes has been championing. We actually flipped between opinions on whether we should have this or should skip it for the time being. I'm not really sure where do we stand on that. For example, original assumption was it's going to break the user. Then you, John, suggested that we could actually re-require the original modules within the uh, index.js or the wrapper file in the new module in such a way that this whole business is going to be transparent to the user, etc. And eventually, what was the final decision? I'm not able to recollect as such. But otherwise, in my opinion, that's it.
Yeah, so on the request stuff, so breaking request and response specifically out into their own modules. I volunteered to help with that, but I haven't done much around it basically. So Wes wanted to do that in order to break that out. I'll try to check in with him about it because I think I know what needs to be done. I just haven't, for whatever reason, I haven't focused on it yet. I don't think it's a huge blocker, but I think it was something that Wes wanted to see happen. So it's mostly just moving that code out, which has already been done. The docs need to get updated in the request repo, which exists now. And we also need to do the same thing for response, I believe, and then update the documentation on those repos, et cetera. I'm checking right now to see, is there any, we had an issue or a PR before, I think, that was tracking documentation changes that needed to happen. Does anybody know? Here we go. Outstanding issues with Express 5 docs. I think most of that stuff has happened. The actual comment hasn't been updated, but here is that issue if anybody wants to look at it at some point. Cool. I don't have anything specific else to add about status updates on 4.18 and 5. It sounds like things are being worked on, et cetera. How do you feel about it, Giresh? How do you feel? Do you think we're getting closer?
We are definitely, yeah. I believe it should be just a matter of now the release proceedings, like cutting the branch and doing the testing and basically the logistics aspects. before we actually make the cut.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I know you've been working close with Wes on all that stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. So definitely the 5.0 alpha versions are out of the picture. If any versions which we are going to release, it has to be the GA, because between the last alpha and at present, there is no major code changes that needs to be considered for making another alpha cut. One of the main thing was this query parser thing, and given that we are not progressing with that, so it should be the documentation change on a majority. So it is essentially means that Express 5 GA is on the horizon.
Cool. And
Yeah.
just now in the meeting issue, Doug posted a comment, or 5 minutes ago, I just saw it, about his updates. I think it probably echoes what we were just saying. Express 4.18 release status. Everything's lined up to land now. Holding pattern around the new triage and captain docs landing in the repo around the release process, which is some of what's next on the agenda is discussing where some of those documents should land. He linked to discussions on this proceeded in the past week, and I provided my recommendation at an issue that I will link you to. It's actually an issue I already linked to in chat, but I'll link to it again.
I would, I mean, before we actually leave this particular agenda item, Doug, if you're listening, can you make one sentence about your availability, I mean, bandwidth in the next week or so? Is there any challenge in terms of the 5.0 GA release? Do you need any assistance, any challenges as such, etc.? Or do you want to seek any extended help from the rest of the TC? Kind of, because I mean, based on your availability, I'm just wondering, should we just hold up the release because of your personal situation and things like that? Can you make a statement on that, please? Probably we can move on. He can update based on his free.
I'm gonna paste a link again real quick. This is the discussion that kind of started the next thing on our agenda, which is just about where should items live in the repos, like documents that are shared across different repos, like the contributing guide, code of conduct, and also some things like the triage and repo captain and TC member list. That's conversation that I'm not sure if anybody in here has any strong opinions on it, or if you're not caught up on it right now, you probably don't have the time in this meeting to get caught up on it. But there is a conversation that's happening there just about where should, Girish was party to this, so maybe you have some opinions on it, about where these documents should live.
Yeah, I agree that it's a little bit confusing, because in the first place, we have 3 organizations, and each organization have a number of repos, and the code of conduct, is it applicable pan organization? I would say yes, but then where to place the code of conduct that structurally, physically, and philosophically cover all the organizations? Physically, it has to sit in one organization, but then how do we indicate that this belongs to all the 3 Express family organizations? Number 1. Number 2, how do we handle the scenario of specific documentation which has the jurisdiction in one organization and one repo specifically? For example, the guidelines on committing, review process, and things like that potentially could be a per repo basis. more importantly, given the fact that we are coming up with a repo captain proposal, it makes sense that the repo captain have some amount of ownership and respond or say on how he wants to run the show on a per repo basis, and in which case the actual proceedings and best practices have to be confined on a repo basis. So where do we place such document? We have 90 plus repos, so it's not easy to define something that covers all the repos while the specificity is pertinent to each repos. That's the actual challenge.
Right.
Yes,
And
so I think we all agree
yeah,
this is
go
a
ahead.
toughie, but none of us have strong opinions. But as you say, if we put it in one place, nobody will see it when they look at the other places, and put it in every place, everybody sees it, but then it's not unified. But then perhaps we don't want it to be that unified. I don't know. That's the thing. If I were a repo captain, I wouldn't want the hassle of maintaining. I'd want it the same across all of them, even though I would have. Leeway to change it. I'm not sure that I'd prefer to concentrate on the actual real value, which is in the code's functionality, rather than the code of conduct, which should be broadly the same everywhere for all of these repos. I don't want to labor it too much. I don't have strong opinion on this, John, Jaresh. I'm not sure. Yeah.
For yeah, go ahead, please.
I don't have a strong opinion specifically either. So the question, to kind of try to summarize a little bit, if I can, of what was being discussed. There's a lot of comments there basically, but what I took away from it is essentially like, well, Brad, let me back up. Sorry, my brain's going. I care mostly about change management in terms of if we have an actual document in every single repo, then when we change something, we have to go and try to change it everywhere. That's the thing I care about the most in terms of, I would be happy to see just a document that's like contributing.md and it just links out to, somebody mentioned maybe on the Express site, we have it, so it links out to that. So that way it's documented.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm happy with that specifically.
I think that's probably the best, a link to the one site, so we don't have to have lots of copies around. I think we should go. That's what I think is a reasonable idea.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that would like live in the actual Express repo itself, or it doesn't really matter where it lives. The site right now is set up. We're just adding some automation to it so that there's a page on the site that it lists like the contributing guidelines, code of conduct, I think, and also the security practices for reporting security things. And we've written a little script that just pulls those from the Express repo. It just creates a document based on the 3 other documents and shoves it all in together. But also the second part of the conversation was where to maintain a list of TC members, triagers, repo captains, et cetera, which I think is interesting because I have before had to track down that list. It is on the site somewhere, like under the community or something. There's a list of current and past triage or TC members. That's an interesting one to me too. I agree also that having that in one spot, like fewer documents. that's what I think basically.
Yeah, I had some conversation with Doug in one of the PRs or issues as an off topic because I didn't know where the Express TC member list is. I had to click on the team at Express.js/TC and see the number of TC members, and then that was not giving us split up between active and inactive members. Then eventually he showed me where it is documented, which was basically in the expressjs.com website. So definitely there is a concern over the visibility of the TC members, the committers, and the triagers. It would be really good to have them in one place for easy visibility. For various reasons, to know who is who, to get help, to seek help, and to have a better collaboration. It's absolutely important that we know the people who are involved. Being an open source project, anybody can come and chime in, but then to know who is responsible for what should be clearly documented.
I agree. For a lot of reasons, I agree with that as well. And I just want to bring this up because it was part of Doug's comment that he put in here about the release updates. I don't think we'll have an answer to this, but I don't personally see the triage captain. I don't personally see the triage docs and the captain docs personally being a blocker for release. From my perspective, it's documentation. It would be, you know, like if we had to bump a version, I don't even personally think we would have to bump a version, but that's not up to me. Not saying anybody is suggesting that, but I don't want to see that stuff be a blocker. I want to see those things get done, but I'd rather we, you know, I'd rather we get the code out and pushed up before we, or if we could get the triage and the captain docs landed during all this stuff, great. But I don't personally see them as part of the release process. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was, in my mind, those are always kind of administrative separate things, but yeah.
Yeah, it's worthwhile to check in this meeting itself because most of the triages are here. At least in the worst case, what's going to happen is the list of the existing triages are not going to be reflected as is when we cut a release. Are we all okay for that? In the eventuality, we might need to re-PR with our names in the new master branch.
Right. That was actually, so yeah, so let me back it up. That Girish is right. That's actually that's what precipitated a lot of this conversation was when and where exactly that stuff is going to land and how it fits into the actual release process, which is something that I don't have strong opinions on, basically. I don't want to create any more work for Doug cutting the releases, et cetera, but also I'm happy with whatever. If those docs are outdated for a little bit, I'm okay with that personally. But yeah, so there is part of the reason why this came up was when is that going to be up to date on master, essentially. That's not specifically a question, but that's just, exactly. I'm okay with it.
I think if you're volunteering as a triager, you're not going to have too strong an opinion on your name getting there eventually. I mean, the whole point for us is to be, you know, Batman for the project. So as long as it ends up there, I'm sure most people will be fine. It's more about the health of the project, and we're doing whatever is the healthy option for the project is what we want, and we will catch up later.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so we're just about essentially at time, I guess, in terms of that. One last thing I just want to put in is that this whole conversation in terms of having the docs and the lists in one prominent place, it's interesting to me, and I think important. It's important because obviously people should get credit and they should be able to be proud of their being involved, and there should be recognition.
Yeah.
And also one of the things what this makes me think of is that post 5.0, I would like us to take a look at the Express site itself and try to start planning on how to rework it, how to make it a better resource. Ryan and I have kind of gone back and forth about that a little bit. And now that we have more people involved, I think that would be a cool thing to do, specifically because if we start relying more in a world where we might rely more on the website to get important information out there, then it makes sense to me to make sure that we're using the website to be able to easily surface important information and give resources and yada, yada, yada. So redesigning it in a way that meets those goals was great. I saw somewhere in some discussion that I don't know the numbers, I don't remember them, but there's an insane number of like monthly views on that website. It's insane. I think it was maybe close to 1 million or several 100,000 or something like that. So I think it's an awesome resource that we'll be able to use in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about getting docs on that site and, being able to have people actually encounter them and find them and make, if we have to force it on them a little bit, like here's the list of people, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be on board with that.
Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about in terms of the project or code before we try to see if we want to talk about any triage stuff? Sounds like a no. Okay. So going into the triage discussion, which this can be as short or as long as we want. On the agenda, we have onboarding more help from enterprise folk or companies, etc. How to get involved in Express 5, where to start. I think, Glenn, you proposed both of those. So do you want to start with one of those?
Yeah. So this follows on from what Jaresh said the other day in the discussion. I've forgotten the number of the item, but it's essentially the same thing, Jaresh. So, and it also follows on from what you said, John, about having a triagers meeting. I can't say my company name. We're very careful about my company. I work for a big enterprise. And what we can do is I can get people to do what I'm doing, and I can tell them and they will be excited, but we need to get organized to do that. Meaning I think we might need a separate triagers meeting. I think, John, I can probably get enough people so that we'll have to have a schedule for people doing triage, meaning, Alice and Bob on Monday and Wendy and John on Tuesday will be answering the questions on GitHub if we get enough people, so that we're not actually having to look all the time with people allocated for certain days. I'm going to talk to people and I'm going to talk to people regularly, but I don't want to flood us. I want to do it kind of gradually, just one or two at a time to bring them on. Yeah. Because I don't think we can cope yet. We're not at that point. And I think after we get people on from enterprise, after we talk, enterprise involvement will follow, maybe. But firstly, we've got to get the people from the enterprise involved, because certainly this product is widely used by most enterprises, and we just need to educate them about what it is and how valuable it is. And it's used it's used a lot. We all know that. But it's just a case of firstly educating, bringing people in from those organizations, getting them on the triage track, encouraging them. Hopefully they would want to become repo captains. And I think some of the things you've already talked about, John, but I think we're going to have a separate triage meeting just to get people going. And the things, Jaresh, you talked about, the other contributions we want from enterprise, not just people doing things on their own time, will follow. Yeah. It is an active process and will involve people. And unfortunately, some of it we can't do so well because we don't have the OpenJS. We're probably not going to be having any conferences for a while. And that's where we get people together and we can go and advocate. That's where, John and I knew Jaresh, we met at a conference. Yeah. I had already met Wes before. It looks slightly different in person. But that's how it's got to go. Some things we can do now, I can certainly do quite a lot, but we need to get a little bit of structure around it. And I think we're getting there, especially with the proposals and the documents for triage captains and how widely used this is. And it is prestigious. I think people understand that. We can say, hey, let's go and bat for the Express project. Start off small, start off humble, just get in there and answer the questions when they come in. Because a lot of them are as simple as, you don't always know the answer, but a lot of them are very simple as your routes are wrong. Here's an example of it working. Or, you really do need to give me an example.
I agree.
So I think
I agree with,
I can do some stuff, but we do need, that is the organization, and we can keep chatting on that thing. We do need, I think, that separate triage meeting. We may need a regular one. We can make it shorter than this.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm very interested in the organization aspects of a lot of this stuff. It's fascinating to me for some reason. I've been talking about that a lot, so I'm slowly trying to share. For anybody listening that doesn't know, there is a triage team discussion board. I can drop the link to that just in case anybody needs it again. I'm not sure if I don't think it's public. I think you have to be a part of the triage team to see it. So anybody watching this later, you probably won't be able to see it. But I pinned a post on the top of that, just like me spitballing, like, here's stuff that I've been doing. I literally go back to this page to find the links that I use for certain things on triage stuff. I still have no idea what I'm doing.
I use your links.
Cool,
use your links. Don't worry, I use them all the time.
Cool. Yeah, I still have no idea what I'm doing, and so I would love to figure that out and try to teach other people to do it too. Yeah, but I agree. It would probably be really good to have this kind of conversation in general in a triage meeting. And if you can bring more people, you've brought great people so far. We have great people. People have been doing awesome, which I'm stoked about.
We will have more great people. I just need to do it in a structured manner. And when I say to them, come on, we need to have a welcome wagon for them, which I'm hoping you can do. We'll only have so much time, and I read what Jirash said. We need more people to be able to do this, and Jirash has talked about that in other meetings. And the other things we want will surely follow once we get the people from big enterprise involved.
I agree. I see. One, I've thought too about, like, I've thought about this a million times. I don't know why I like thinking about this stuff, but it'd be really cool to be able to actually onboard people, like either in a triage meeting or like one of the things that I know that we're afraid of or we don't want to see happen is people coming and then dropping off, falling off, either because some churn will happen, and that's fine. But what I don't want to see is I don't want to see people who actually want to be here and want to do it, who just, for whatever reason, can't decode everything because it's a complicated moving mess. I'm trying to figure out how to help people actually get leverage, I guess. I have a question that's specifically for you. I don't even know how to answer this for myself. I've been asking myself this a lot, but so you're thinking about getting people from your organization and potentially other organizations to come and join, which you've done already. What do you think the value proposition is for enterprises, but also more specifically, like, for the humans, for people for new triagers, for contributors? What do you see the value prop? Like, how are you selling these people on it, basically?
Okay, so I think a lot of people want to get involved in open source work. They don't know how to get involved. What they believe is that the people doing this are superhuman and geniuses, and a lot of the time they're not. They're the people that turned up and regularly made commits and assisted and answered questions. And that's the message I have to tell them. No, what we need are steadfast, solid people that will actually carry, because we don't want hit and run people, as you said. We want those people that want to take part. And I think the project in itself, every single person in the JavaScript ecosystem, whether they're writing TypeScript or whatever, right, React, everyone has to know how to use this application. It is used for everything, whether you front it with a CDN or what have you. This is the thing behind the front that runs the code. That is enough to sell it. That people are not asking. There are alternatives to Express, but they're not asking for them because it is sufficient for what they need. What they don't know is they think there's this machine at the back running it, and there's not. There's a very small group, and what I'm communicating is the group could do with some assistance. Could you lend a hand? You can start off very small, just answering and labeling issues, question, problem, so forth and so on. That's how I'm selling it. I think there are more people out there. And the other thing is, for people in their career, depending upon where they're starting, most of them have never made any open source contribution. And for them, it is absolutely thrilling to be involved in something bigger outside of their regular work. So it's not as hard to sell as you think. People just don't know how to get involved, and they're a bit intimidated.
Well said. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm going to drop something real quick into the chat. This is the status board project that Wes has been working on. The reason I just dropped it into chat, if for anybody watching this, you can probably find it by Express.js status board. If you Google that, you'll probably find it. It's expressjs.github.io/statusboard. The reason I dropped this in the chat is for two things. First off, I like this project because it showed me something that I think is rad. I've seen in notifications. Look at top contributors. Girish, 109 contributions. So this is activity in terms of like issues, closing repo, closing stuff like work. Girish is currently the #2 person behind Doug. Maybe there's problems with the way this is compiled. Maybe it's not accurate. It's still work in progress, etc. Over the past 90 days, maybe it's not, whatever. But Girish, you're awesome. You're kicking butt, man. Thank you. You're doing a really good job. But also,
Thanks,
I wanted
John.
to say, yeah, thank you. Seriously, thank you. I'm sure mine are just from closing issues and stuff, but also Ryan in the past like 3 months, which is, I think how long he's even been here. He's #3, which is rad. But so for anybody watching this, the 3 people that might watch it, I know Girish, and I know Glenn from the Node.js Collaborator Summits. I not too long ago was somebody that really wanted to get involved in Node.js and open source in general. And I got to go there and I got to meet all these awesome people. And they're 2 people that I highly respect. And I got to meet them at these conferences and whatnot. And like, Girish, you're a Node.js TSC member, right? Technical Steering Committee member, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, for anybody watching this, like, it's cool that you get to rub shoulders with people that I think are influential and doing cool things in the community. So like, you know, Glenn and Girish, you're both awesome people. I'm glad I get to work with you guys on something. It's fun for me. So that's just my bleeding heart kind of spiel there.
I'm probably in awe of those people actually writing code, more code. I'm just like one step up from the people that were too terrified and thought only superhumans got involved. So we all have certain amounts of bandwidth. That's the thing. But if we have enough people, you know, I think it'll make a big difference. It will allow room for the top contributors to, you know, breathe more easily and tread water a little bit better, which is what I think Jaresh was talking about when he was talking about getting a big enterprise involved. Go on.
I just add, I think all that's great, but there's a lot of benefit to just being able to disappoint other people on the internet. So just closing issues, there's a certain joy in that.
I've always said that the greatest, like the most under-recognized skill in open source is being able to say no while not being mean or something like that. I don't know. So we have next on the agenda, which, I mean, I just bring it up because I'm sure we could talk about this forever. This issue that we're talking about now about getting people involved. In terms of getting people involved in how to get involved in version 5 is the other agenda item that Glenn proposed. I don't really have an answer for that. I don't know if Glenn, if you have anything you want to say about it or if it was a question.
Well, I'm going to start reading the docs. I haven't had the time, to be honest. When Dresh said, because Dresh said, "Oh yeah, I'll help with session," I looked at session. It looked quite small, and then once I got into it, my God, it had a lot of bits going on and moving parts. And I haven't had a chance really to get out of there. I've been working through the unit tests, just made a couple of PRs where I found bugs, and I have a plan for it. But one of the things I haven't really seen is like, I mean, it's odd that we're doing this. I don't have what is the innate 5? I know there's like a regular expression route I've heard mentioned. I don't know what the big differences are between 4 and 5. And I don't really know where to go. To have to read all of the documents to find it would be a bit much. There's no sort of quick summary of what's. I haven't seen what's new, or have I missed something? Do you know, Jaresh?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
So when I'm saying getting involved with Express 5, I'm not so sure I understand what the big differences are between 4 and 5. And I'm not sure where to find those out before I start delving into documents and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the main difference between 4 and 5 is in terms of the functional changes in the middleware. That's definitely through the documentation only. And that's what we are trying to close in the gap the last 2-3 months. I don't know whether there is a single list that is maintained, but let me send it over.
Yeah, I just linked to the history.md file on the 5.0 branch. This, to my knowledge, is the one place where it would or could be. I'm not certain that it's completely up to date. It's up to date based on the latest alpha. But that's a good point. We need to make sure, I mean, there will be a change log put together. But also, yeah, I 100% agree with you that like there's so many things going on that it can be really difficult to even know what's happening,
Yeah. For most part, the documentation which we were contributing were on express.js.com, which specifically lists the major changes in 5.0. But that is super compressed than the lists sent by John. It depends on the audience. I think, between this and that would be a good choice of going through.
Yeah, I'd raise that in a separate item for another meeting, that we need a more, and especially when it's released, there will have to be some sort of announcement, some issuing either Medium or whatever we do. Node Foundation, they tend to do releases like they did with Node 14 today. You know, and I went through and I read, hey, continuation, local storage, async replacement, hurrah, and get rid of some of those modules that I've not liked all these years. But we need something like that just does a highlight at some very high level, because even as a member, a triage member, I'm uncertain about, you know, and it's been going on a long time since before I was here, Jaresh. Yeah, I've only really been involved actively a few months, and I was working with the package maintenance committee, and my main role was getting together with John and Wes at the conference and like sitting at a table and saying we need triages. But now we're here, I need to understand a little bit more. And when I say onboarding, I just mean we need to do a little bit of work here. We need to sit down and perhaps have another meeting and say what are the prescient user features in 5 that have come out. I simply don't know. I'd have to go and read all the docs like this diff, and that's a lot of I don't want to labor that too long, but I think we need to.
Did you open an issue about this specifically just now? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I haven't. I just put it on the items to discuss. Wanted to talk here first, just to say, like, if I were to want to use a new I'm not sure what the advantages are between 4 and 5 even. I'd say we have code changes, but we have documents, but I'm not sure if we really need like a headline list between 4 and 5.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
I'm quite happy to have a look.
Future will do it. But I agree with that. I think that's definitely one. I'm sure that's something that Doug will want to put together a change log. But also I just want to say that like, that's something that I've been struggling with a lot in the project. I have mentioned it sparingly in issues here and there, but it's something I'm trying to figure out for myself in terms of like keeping track of what's happening in the spinning plates and whatnot. There's so many things that I am now aware of that I'm like, I'd love to help on this. But when I sit down at my computer to do a thing, I don't always know what to do. I've started assigning myself to things, but that's not always the best. So I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about project management stuff in general in terms of how it relates to triage. But yeah, I agree. I have no idea what all's going on pretty often.
Actually,
go.
Something we perhaps should think of. We always think of triages now as developers. Perhaps we should think of people that do those other roles too.
Can you elaborate on that?
project management for Express. Like we have those people in big enterprise, and any project of any size needs people to like sit on handling the documentation as PRs are made, making sure that the documents are there, that it's usable. And going forward, perhaps that might be an idea, but you actually need people to do that. And that's, again, thing from a big enterprise. They can provide people that are willing to work and might be given time to do this. Because there are other soft skills involved in this, as you know, John, that are equally as valuable. It's only when you come to say what's the difference between 4 and 5, you realize, whoops, I don't want to have to look at the code deltas.
Yeah. Briefly on that specific PM stuff, there was a conversation, Tierney Siren on Twitter was like, if you had $10,000 or however much it was to give to any open source project, any project, who would you choose? And I tweeted and I was like, I mean, I'd say Express, but at the same time, I don't know what they would do with the money. Like, you know, like I would specifically Express because Express does not currently take funding. And it's interesting that if they don't, it's come up a bunch of different times, but that's not the point. The point is that I kind of developed the thought a little bit and I was like, honestly, like the one thing I think that it would need from a contributor's perspective is project management. But that's the one thing that like it's one of the one things that I feel like would be a good thing to pay someone to do, in that it takes so much effort currently. You have to be so close to the project. You have to know so much about what's going on, that there's only a few people who have all that context, and most of them would rather be contributing to code or doing more important things that only they can do. So that's one of those things where I would like to see somebody do it full time. I have no idea what the heck that would look like or how, but yeah, I agree. So we are just about on time. And I just wanted real quick, since we have David here, I might have asked you this in the last meeting, I don't remember or whatever, but welcome, you're here. Do you have, like, how's it been? Have you gotten to triage? Has it been good? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Because none of us do. So do you have any questions, or like, what have you been up to, I guess? I don't know.
All I've done thus far is I've just gone through issues and tried to get a sense of what needs attention. Some are pretty obvious that they're stale and can be closed. Others, you know, you leave a comment like, I'm going to close this unless you can come up with X or Y, in which case we'll feel free to reopen it. So that's been the extent of my contribution thus far, but I've enjoyed it.
Cool.
Seen the issues on it, the Express repo go below 100, partially due to my efforts, so that was fun.
Yeah, I'm also interested, like, how did you know how to do that? In terms of just like, I don't even remember. I'm curious. Like, you've just been onboarded, so like, how'd you figure out how to do that? Good job.
Well, I went to another one of these meetings, and that's one of the things I discussed. Sounds like issues need to be closed. And just looking at the issues, I can tell, there's 4 people working on this stuff. Like, they can't handle all this. So, fortunately, I guess correctly, I suppose. Yeah, it might be helpful as we bring on more people to have maybe example documentation, like, you know, here's a good helpful day if you're given a shift or something like that, things you can do to model it. But I don't think you need extensive documentation. Just say, hey, you know, here's how to tackle an issue. Here's some things to look for. And if you can respond to an issue, get it closed, you know, that's helpful to the project.
Cool. Rad. Thanks. I asked just because I'm super curious, like, you know, we're all figuring out as we go along, and glad you're here, glad you're doing stuff. So sorry, you probably know Glenn, so I'm sorry about that. But,
yeah, from the enterprise that cannot be named.
Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about or bring up or whatever? Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I think that's probably just about it. I mean, this would be the first time we've done one of these ending at the regular time, so I don't want to spoil that by going over. So.
And thank you for your good clock keeping. I do appreciate, because you know, a lot of us do other meetings, and we have to keep things in boxes.
Yeah. Well, I started watching some of the other Node.js working group meetings, and some of them get done in like 35 minutes. And I was like, how do they do that? I think the answer is they all have other meetings to go to right afterwards. So.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Good night or good morning, depending upon where you are.
Yep. Bye, y'all.
Thank you very
Take care.
much. Bye.
Bye-bye.